Okay, everybody. Welcome to the November 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Conservation Commission. We will now have, since we're doing it by Zoom, we will have a quick roll call.
Michael, are you talking?
Oops, yes, I'm talking. You can't hear me?
I can. Something must be Kelly.
Yeah, I think the problem is on Kelly's end.
Somebody give him a sign language to so he can see how do we okay, I'm talking. I'm now starting the meeting at 7:17 with a sort of a roll call vote. Michael, aye. Each commissioner announce yourself.
Courtney Eck, present.
Kurt Stiegel, present.
I
Jacob
can't
Pep.
hear anyone.
Let's continue the roll call.
Steve Shaw present.
Okay, and did I hear you, Jacob?
Yes, Jacob Strauss present.
Okay. We've got 5 of us here. Oh, Carol, announce yourself.
I did. Carol
Oh.
McGarry present.
I'm
Okay.
still signing in.
Okay. Let's start the
Okay,
meeting.
I'm logging out.
Okay. Okay, review of the agenda. Are there any items that are important that we wouldn't have been able to deal with? Have known before the 48-hour rule? Hearing none, we will proceed with the agenda. We're starting with land management. Essentially, I'm plowing ahead, even though Kelly is not here for whatever reason. Hopefully he can get in here. But he has proposed this motion.
Would you like me to summarize? Would that be helpful until he gets back on?
I still can't hear anyone.
Somebody text him that he needs to change his speakers. That is somebody doing a chat with him, Courtney or somebody.
Damn.
Um,
Yeah, I
Okay.
have. It's up fine.
just tell him that we can hear him, so it's a little strange.
If you can hear me, then please, others, Carol, Sam, and Xenia, take the commission through this vote and let's see if we can just finish it without me.
Okay, got it. Okay, Carol, proceed.
Okay, so the Land Management Task
I
Force
don't get this.
has met a couple of times now to talk about priorities for the coming months and especially for our budget. So some of the priorities that we want to get the commission's feedback and approval are, the first one is revamping the self-guided trail signs. There's something like 20 odd, more than 20 trail signs that it's a self-guided trail around the Barber. The proposal is to basically remove some of them that are damaged or obsolete. There are a number of signs, for instance, that refer to the forestry project, which now is, a few years in the past, and so it's not as relevant. And then upgrade the signs that remain. And some of the examples of the signs we want to keep is in the entrance area at the Crabapple Grove, a description of the field management to protect bird nesting habitat, which has really helped to reduce people walking in the middle of that field. And then, some of the other ones are described here. So that's the first thing. And the not to exceed a total cost of $1,500 for these signs. The next one is brush hogging the tennis court area. I don't know how many of you have been there, but there's an area that was cleaned out of invasives. It's surrounded by pine trees, and several years ago, there was a really strong effort to get rid of these just an abundant amount of vines that were clinging up. And so, and since then, chips have been put down, and now the idea is, let's brush hog this emerging vegetation and keep that down. So Kelly has identified the contractor who could do that for not more than $300. The next one is removing a dead tree right next to, if you go to the parking lot, it has like a fence, a split rail fence, and right at the corner of one of them is probably a dead red cedar, and it looks pretty, it's completely dead. And I think the habitat value is minimal, and so the idea is to remove it, that dead snag, and there's also a fallen tree, and where the dead snag is near the parking lot, plant a new native cedar. I think this is a typo. It was we were thinking of an eastern red cedar because it's a great spot for it, sunny, dry, and it's a great habitat tree. So that's the summary of the suggestions and recommendations from the task force.
Okay. I'll ask a few questions. I guess where's this money coming from?
This is coming from, I think this is money, well, now I wish Kelly was on. This is money that was already in the budget.
This is the current land management budget,
Yes,
as opposed to one of the other funds.
yes,
Yes.
correct. That's my
Okay.
understanding.
I just want to be
Maybe
clear.
it's, Courtney, can you chat to, since I'm talking, and just to verify with Kelly that the funds would come from land management rather than one of the other funds?
Okay, the $1,500 cost, is that, seems like a lot, but is that reasonable? That's just for, there's so many signs, I guess.
Well, okay, so
And,
the interesting thing is one of the signs is the one right near the barn. And that planting is,
Yes, we have all the funds in the budget.
we can hear, we can, someone,
he's answering the question in the
I
chat.
got it. I was just giving him a,
Michael, to answer your question, there's a very nice sign right by the Barber Barn for some native plantings that were done about 3 years ago. Unfortunately, some of those have died back and so forth. So the sign is basically obsolete. So the thought is that this cost also includes replacing that sign in such a way that if plantings are changed, that the sign can easily be updated. So that's why it's a little bit more expensive than you might expect.
is there, and I guess I'll ask the last one before opening up to others, is it worth the value of trying to plant that tree by the corner of the parking lot versus all the other trees that are still around there? Is that something prominent in that location that it's worth that expense, given all the trees in that area?
I mean, it's right, it is prominent, it's right next to the parking lot. I guess it's kind of optional, but on the other hand, I don't think it's, from the quotes I've gotten for trees, the expense isn't higher than, actually, it's kind of moderate expense for that, but
No, I'm not challenging that number as opposed to just the value of spending that $500 on a single tree there, as opposed to that funding could be used for some other activities that might be a little bit more useful or prominent. Maybe others feel differently, but
500 is just for the new tree.
I think it's just for the tree, yeah. And well,
Yes.
for the planting of the new tree. Sam, do you happen to know?
Yeah, it's about $400 for the tree itself. Inflation has really taken a toll on even common trees like eastern red cedar, and the planting we probably can get Department of Public Works to plant it for us.
How big is this tree?
It's about a 6 to 8 foot tall.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
not
the-
very tall. I mean, it used to be that you, for that price, you would get something that was 4 feet taller than that, but that's not what the prices are these days.
Yeah, to be honest, that seems excessive for putting a tree at the corner of the parking lot of Barber. I mean, we don't have a ton of money for land management, and $500 could be pretty valuable. So I would need to be convinced why we need to spend that on a 8-foot tall red cedar, eastern red cedar.
Other commissioners have comments? We might have to continue this later because we have a hearing at 7:30.
I just have a question, is who recommended the eastern cedar, white cedar?
We
Where did
just
that recommendation come
discussed it
from?
within the land management group. The eastern red cedar.
We're talking about eastern white cedar now, though, aren't we?
No, eastern, I'm
Oh,
sorry,
eastern red cedar,
eastern
sorry.
red. Because it's a dry spot. And sunny.
Any other the question is whether,
Yeah,
We-
Michael, I just have a question. Being relatively new to the commission, I'm just curious. So this is the land management's budget. Is that within Conservation Commission's budget or?
within our budget, we have our largest non-staff expenses, land management for all of the different properties, about 800 acres that we oversee, that are called conservation properties, and the Barber Reservation is sort of the largest and the sort of pinnacle, sort of the queen of all our properties, so to speak, in terms of its size and diversity. And we've been working on a management plan and various improvements there over the last number of years, all the fields. That's the one with all the big fields that we've done a lot of clearing on. We did some forestry work to pay for some of the clearing of the stone walls and such. I'm trying to think of how we're going to tackle this because we have 2 minutes. I don't know if other commissioners have comments, whether we're going to have to continue this discussion in about whatever, an hour or something like that. Whether other people could come back in about that time, because we have this hearing that we need to get through.
Should
on
we just
schedule.
approve all except the last item?
I don't know. I can't tell whether people have.
I mean, I
Question.
also have a question about the signs. I don't remember how much we spent on them last time, but
If you have questions about them and then you continue, then we have to continue this discussion. I want to keep to the schedule. And so unfortunately for Sam and Zelda and Kelly, who can't, Zania, sorry. And the mute Kelly, or the unhearing Kelly, we'll have to, we're going to come back to this discussion in about 45 minutes or an hour or something like that. And see where it goes. So, sorry about that. So I'm gonna have to move on. It's now 7:30. This is a notice of a public hearing. Conservation Commission, Town of Sherborn, Massachusetts. Notice is hereby given that the Conservation Commission of the Town of Sherborn we hold a virtual public hearing at 7:30 on the 3rd of November, 2022. There's a notice of intent hearing will be held pursuant to the Sherborn Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 17, to consider the proposal by owner John Dennehy for the construction of a new single-family house and associated site and utility work at 3 Prospect Street, map 5, lot 61. Work will be performed more than about 10 feet from an isolated vegetated wetland. Application is available for viewing at the Sherborn Conservation Office. All persons desiring to be heard will get an opportunity to speak at this hearing. So opening the hearing, and do we have all the green cards and whatnot for this?
Yes, we have all the green cards back.
Okay,
There's one we did not get back, and that was for,
So Michael, I assume that I am moot as well as mute.
somebody has to
I'll
text. him
see you all
before-
another time.
Or somebody could text him about being back in an hour. Sorry about this, everybody. We usually don't have these technical difficulties.
so
Okay.
the only card they did not get back was for the railroad, and we wouldn't expect to get that one back. So they're
Right.
fine.
Okay, fine. So, okay, let's start it up here, and who wants to take it away? And I will stop. Did I stop sharing the screen? I think so.
Uh,
Okay,
France, are you prepared to share, or would you like us to?
I can share. That'll be fine. My name is Francis with Creative Land and Water Engineering. I'm representing John Dennehy, the applicant. So I'm just going to do like a quick overview of what we're proposing, and we'll open it up to any questions. John can feel free to chime in at any point. So we're proposing the construction of a single family residence and all the associated utility work. The work is proposed within the buffer zone of an IVW. In this project, am I sharing the screen? Oh, sorry.
no,
Sorry. Hello. Is it shared now?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. So proposing a single family residence, we already have the septic partially constructed. We're probably going to need to lift the retaining wall a little bit more because it's not going to meet the coverage as it stands. And we're going to have to also install the main line and the septic tank because none of those are currently in. That's going to have to be slightly modified with the Board of Health according to the approved plans. They did approve the previous plan, but we're proposing to relocate the house, and we're also going to relocate the septic tank. So the work is going to be within the 50 foot of the existing IVW. And what we're proposing for that is that we want to reorientate the wetland so it's closer to the wooded area. Right now, out of the 1,573 square feet of the IVW, we only have about 130 square feet that's protected, that's shaded by the existing wooded area. And we're proposing to increase that shaded area to 1,804 square feet when we reorientate the wetland closer to the wooded area. And we want to do that orientation is because we believe that it's going to have a more sustainable condition for the existing IVW. It will be closer to the well. We will create a 10-foot wide earthen berm down gradient of it so we can keep all that water in that replication area. And the main reason we want to relocate the replication area is because right now it's like a finger wetland going into the yard, and that's going to significantly reduce the applicant's use of the yard. So we're thinking that if we relocate it closer to the wooded area, besides having a more sustainable function, it's also going to be further away from foot traffic and any potential encroachment into the wetland with yard work and things of that nature. And during the site walk, conservation did bring up the issue of, or rather suggested that the house be moved further away from the existing IVW and closer to Prospect Street. But upon consultation with the client, he said that's not an avenue that he wants to follow. He would rather keep the house further away from Prospect Street and work out any mitigation or replication features that we can execute to satisfy the Conservation Commission without having to relocate the house. That's basically it on my part. If anyone has any questions, I feel free to answer them.
I do have a question. This is Tim Batchelder. I live in Prospect Street. And we moved here a little while ago. And actually GLM were the people that helped us with the design of a septic tank. It was really quite botched over a year, but it was eventually settled, which was really important to us to protect the wetlands. So I'm just curious, how common and customary is it to relocate a wetland? My understanding is that a wetland is actually a pretty important resource.
Tim, can you please wait to be recognized? So.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. I'm new to this, so I apologize.
No worries, no worries. So usually the chair, everybody who wants to speak should wait for the chair to recognize. And I think we're going to take some discussion from the commissioners first, and then we will definitely open it up for public comments.
That
So
sounds good.
yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Joyce, did you want to say something?
So I compiled just a few comments from both the site walk and from that I had heard from commission members, if I could just do them quickly. Carol, did you want to go first?
No, you can go ahead, Joyce.
Okay, so first of all, Clara is in the process of getting a topography for the area where the house and the replication are going. You can see from the plan, there's a topography down by the septic system, but they haven't yet finished. I think they were waiting on the work that would take place for where the proposed house is going in the replication area. So that's one of the things that would to be added to the plan. One of the things that various commission members had mentioned was looking to maximize the protection to the no alteration zone. So as Francis pointed out, one of the things we talked about was moving the house forward a little bit. Maybe not the whole distance, but somewhat. It was mentioned, could the berm be made more parallel to the rear of the house, instead of having it angled and maybe pulled forward a little bit into the yard, so we could preserve a little bit more of the existing isolated wetland. And then once that's done, maybe pulling the fence a little bit further away from that berm to protect more of that 50-foot no alteration zone. The other comments would be, you've shown that footprint of the house. Are you proposing to put a deck or a patio on the house? And then once you get your ideas finalized, we're going to be looking for a table of altered areas, both existing and those are some of the things that I collected over the last week or so.
Okay. John, do you want to comment on whether you can have a patio or any decking?
Well, yeah, not necessarily things you need to answer now, but things to.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Okay, I guess let's have some other comments from Carol and others on the commission, and then we can have a start more of a discussion.
I have a question of just as I'm new.
Let Carol, just hold on, Carol had her hand up first, so.
Yeah, so I shared with the commission members the slide deck from the MACC 2017 conference on mitigation. So some of the things I want to bring up and question is, one thing is no net loss, but the recommendation they have is that the mitigation area should be 1.5 times to allow for edge failure. I guess the US ACE requirements for restoration or creation range from 2 to 1 to 4 to 1, but MACC feels that 1.5 is adequate. So I guess one question I would have based on that is this a 1.5 times in terms of the area?
They claim 1.7 in the material they've given us.
Yes, so we're preserving 449 square feet and we're proposing to replicate 1,911 square feet, which will give us a replication area of 1.7 to 1.
Okay, and then some of the other things that were interesting for the criteria is that the groundwater and surface elevation should be approximately equal to that of the lost area, which I think depending on what we see for the topography, that would be a consideration. And then the other is that the replacement area shall have an unrestricted hydraulic connection to the same water body. It appears that it will. It says that during design, there needs to be a definitive evidence of groundwater hydrology, dig a pit, take a boring on larger projects, which this isn't. So it's basically saying there needs to be a hydrology, understanding of hydrology in the proposed replication area.
Okay. We'll have to
Another-
go into that, yeah, okay. What other issues do you have that we can come back to?
And then the other recommendation is to incorporate a stream channel when possible to rather than doing something like a berm, it appears that they would recommend actively creating a stream channel to channelize the water more definitively.
Okay. Jacob, or I guess Steve, you were next, then Jacob.
Okay, I just have two questions. One, if you're moving a wetland, I guess reconstructing one near a property boundary, how does that affect the neighbors' then buffer zone? Does that matter? And the other is in front of between the house, proposed house and the berm, is there going to be fill in there? Those are two questions.
I guess maybe, yeah, I'm trying to figure out whether we should be answering along the way, but I guess I write them down. Normally we get a little more back and forth, whether,
Well, I think it's hard to answer some of these questions until we have the topo lines in that area, but I think these are all very insightful questions that will help guide Francis and Deshang.
Jacob,
So in addition to the items that have already been brought up, two questions that I have is, how do we know that there's going to be enough water to support a larger replication area here? Because there's presumably a limited supply from the well. And so what is the reasoning for why we expect this larger area, there to be enough water there? This isn't a case where there's this effectively unlimited connection to something else that would obviously get filled in and develop the right hydrology. So I would like to understand that more. Another question is, we seem to be proposing changing the type of wetland from what I guess I would describe as a wet meadow to a shrub covered vegetated wetland. I am not sure how that plays into the performance standards, but I saw recommendations in one of the readings about trying to maintain the current type. And then I suppose a third question is I read through the list of the discussion of whether we can move the house closer to Prospect Street, and I'd like to get clarification on which of these are possible versus which of these are desires, and how that plays into our decision about whether to pursue the replication strategy at all.
okay. Any other commissioners?
Yeah, Michael, I'm sorry. I've got a question.
Sure.
And I think not to pile on what Courtney mentioned earlier, and I think a topographical map might answer this, but it's my memory that there was at least a couple feet of a berm or raised ground behind the well house. And I'm wondering to what extent there's going to be earth moving that's going to need to be done. And if so, where the proposed earth is going to be moved to, or if it's going to be brought off site. And where is the earth moving equipment going to be during that process?
Okay. I guess, anybody else? I haven't done, I mean, there's a whole set of issues. I guess I'm trying to think of whether we need to go through whether, I guess I'll ask first as a question to Francis, what's the schedule we had discussed, whether that you would do the topo work to understand what the grading is. Normally we would have a topo map with the grading that is envisioned for any project.
Yep.
And so what is the status of that work?
As of now, we're waiting on Applewood to get the topo back to us. I'm not sure when he's going to be able to get out there. I'm going to try to pressure him to see if he can get out there sooner rather than later. So maybe by next hearing, we can have a topo and then have a clear discussion of where the replication area will actually be, what earthwork we're going to have to do, and if we're going to have to remove soil or add soils to the replication area.
Okay. I heard the categories of issues. You can react to some of them now. One of them is, I guess, maybe I just try to group it to, before we even get to the actual replication and to what extent, how it would work and the viability of the replication that's being proposed, is the whole issue of lessening the impact on the amount of wetland that will be disturbed, and to what extent, whether you or I see Mr. Denny, he is here, I believe, still. I don't see him on the screen at the moment, but whether there's even the option of, let's say, either shifting the house and moving the berm, whether there's some option for shifting the berm. I guess since we don't have the north-south on this thing here, just shifting the berm down or even the bend. It's all right. I guess we can, there's the north. Shifting the berm just down, we'll call it in the picture. You can blow it up again. Whether there's a way to shift the berm down, or the left side of the berm, instead of inflecting a little bit upwards, would be inflected downwards, so that essentially more than half of the existing wetland, you can maybe possibly the mitigation could be reduced, or the replication reduced, and capture more than half of the existing wetland. And that movement of the berm could, just moving it down would greatly increase the amount of the existing wetland that's preserved versus just the tail at the bottom that might need to be replicated. Whether that option is even something on that you would like to consider.
John, do you want to chime in? Is that something that you would consider, moving the berm closer to the house and moving the fence further away from the wetland? It's going to decrease the backyard, but it's something that we can do to preserve more of the existing wetland.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to answer now, but I'm just wondering whether there is some possible feedback at the moment in terms of how.
Sorry, if I may speak, this is Shayna Bowden. I'm the attorney for Mr. Dennehy. And if he could speak on mute, but my understanding is that he is very amenable to a compromise of moving the berm up.
Okay.
So, Mr. Dennehy, are you able to go off mute and speak to the commission?
I don't think we're muting him. We don't mute anybody, so.
No, I'm asking him to unmute himself.
Oh, yeah, I see.
I'll press a button to ask him to unmute.
I think his primary goal is
can you
just
hear
to
me?
try to,
Oh,
you
yeah, now
know,
we can hear you. You're
get the
unmuted.
project moving as much as possible. So
Yes.
Yeah, no, I see. You're unmuted, I think. I saw you, Mr.
Yeah,
Denny.
yeah, there I am.
so the question is whether you're amenable again to moving the berm up further. So the house would be, you know, a compromise between what is you're proposing currently.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
that way more of the wetland can be, existing isolated wetland could be preserved, which is a concern of the commission.
Yeah. If I could speak for 1 minute, I would like to address the board. This house has sat for a long time, similar to a property over at 50 Whitney Street. And they're dumping tires over there, they're dumping trash. And it's been vacant for a number of years. It had asbestos shingles on it, and they were removed. And, you know, we looking to make a compromise here and expedite things and try to do things in a reasonable fashion to accommodate the conservation department, where we could certainly get the house in there and better the Prospect Street, because this property has sat for a long time as an eyesore, and it would be beneficial for tax revenue for the town, and it would be beneficial for the conservation protection, because they wouldn't have people constantly dumping trash over there.
Appreciate that. We're on the same page on all of that.
Michael, I
then,
wanted to
yeah,
quickly chime in
yeah, okay.
to support the general direction that you're going in, because some of the other things I shared with people is that most wetland mitigations do not succeed, and according to federal data, and so the more we can preserve, and the more likely this entire thing will be to succeed. So I think it's great to hear Mr. Dennehy's willingness to do that. Sorry to interrupt, Michael, but
Yeah, no, that's appropriate. I guess I'd like to hear from, maybe we should just open it up to some public questions as well, since, and then we can sort of come back to some discussion there and how to move forward with what's going to happen. I guess you can, Ian, I guess you could talk, and I guess somebody earlier before started talking, but I'll.
Yeah, that was Tim. So Tim, just raise your hand if you want to.
Yes, if I could speak, my name's Ian Bridgman. I live at 35 Prospect Street.
Okay.
And I don't know if any of you have ever driven past this property.
We've all been there, yes.
All right, well, you can see the absolute cesspit that it is currently, and has been for many, many years. And anything, Mr. Dennehy, welcome to Prospect Street, and we'll give you all the support we can, because this is an absolute nightmare, both from the conservation point of view and the Board of Health point of view. And anything we can do to get this expedited and sorted out, you have the wholehearted support of most of Prospect Street. So please, can we move this forward with all haste?
Sir, if you could, I did a similar project over at 50 Whitney Street, and I literally, and you know, I'm sorry too. I just want to touch upon what Tim said, because I appreciate what he said. I did a similar project over at 50 Whitney Street, and I literally, rehab this property, and it's a beautiful property at 50 Whitney
Okay,
Street.
I'll stop.
Yeah, but I
just
plan
make
on
sure-
doing the same thing over here.
Don't worry, we're all on the same page about this thing
Yeah.
here. We would like to get it
Good.
all dealt with. We just have to follow the rules and the regulations and get.
No,
everyone-
I realize that. I realize that, but I don't want to beat a dead horse. You know, I just
right.
I appreciate Tim. I appreciate it. I appreciate his comments.
I guess
That's all I'm
we'll
saying.
let Tim
all
talk
I'm
now
saying.
too. Tim, did you
Yeah.
want to speak?
Sure. No, absolutely. I know Ian, and I'm pretty recent resident move. So I agree with what you guys are saying, what Ian said. It is a bit of an eyesore. And I completely see in just this brief period, you guys have done a ton of research on the berm and trying to minimize relocating the wetlands. The only thing I would add is that for a lot of us who've moved here, wetlands, if you really research it, they are the key to our water quality, air quality, biodiversity, property values, and so forth. So I would just ask, I'm sure you've considered the effect of relocating a wetland, for example, on water quality. We have a general chemical plant just a mile away. So the wetland is actually the filter for your water, which I'm not sure if every resident knows that if it's a surface water, it is your water filter. So you really want to be careful about preserving the ability to remove toxic agents in the wetland, through the wetlands. And if relocating can do that, that's wonderful. Hydrology, the question was raised, are you going to affect the flow of water? We all rely on wells in the town for our water. We just went through a massive drought. Climate change is not going away. So we want to consider that. Biodiversity, are you going to relocate plants and animals? I'm not aware of how insects and creatures move when you relocate a wetland. That's a question I would just like to know about. And then somebody also brought up geography. If we can have the house be closer to the road. I live right on the road. It's a wonderful road. You don't have to plow as much. Maybe there's some reasons we don't need to eliminate or relocate the wetland. So I'm not in any way attempting to, slow this down. It's absolutely critical. It would be wonderful to have that house replaced. I'm just asking a couple questions because I think for a lot of us, we moved to this town for the ecology. And if you have kids, our kids rely on that. So thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Do you want to join the commission or?
Oh, absolutely. I would love to.
We have a number of boards and committees that I think you would be perfect for. So.
Oh, thank you so much. I would love to. Yeah, I'll talk to you afterwards. I love this town. Anything I can do to help, I'll be grateful to.
Good move. Well done.
Yeah, there we go. This will be one of the, so we'll get two wonderful things out of this. We'll get the eyesore dealt with and we'll get possibly somebody involved here.
That's right.
So on that note, let's figure out how we move forward on this with all the issues here. Because a part of the issue is how much you can, whether you adjust the house, whether you adjust just the berm itself to minimize the amount of mitigation that's needed. That would make it easier, as well as the fact that I see that we're going to need to have, with all of this grading work, we need the grading that's going to go back there in all of this buffer zone. So there's a list of things that we need so that we can move forward at the next meeting, since we're not going to be able to close the hearing at this time. Not all the information is available for us to do some of the thinking that we need to do as directed by Tim. But yes, I think in the next stage, it's a matter of how much the berm can be moved forward to minimize what needs to be replicated, since, as Carol has noted, replication, although some of the macro statistics aren't so good about replication. Here it's a micro case where we can focus on it and make sure it's done well. The issue is that it is tricky to see whether they can do some of the work to justify that the hydrology will work for a replication area, which is partially dependent on the topo and whether you need to do another core testing in that area there to see whether the soils would work for that, and what's gonna really move, putting in a berm, as DeShang talked about on the site visit, that somehow the berm is going to direct the water. That would be nice to see an argument of how a berm, since there's groundwater there, whether the groundwater is just going to go underneath the berm, or whether he's going to put in some sort of impervious surface there, or of clays or fabric or something that's going to somehow direct the water off to the side so that it actually can be fed, as Jacob was bringing up. I mean, that there really is sufficient hydrology there. I mean, I don't think it's so obviously there's water here independent of the well. Obviously the well is showing it, but it's a matter of whether this whether the replication area, which hopefully could be lessened significantly, that you'll be able to show some basis for why that new area would actually work as a replication area in terms of water being there and the topo that you'd have to show. And so I would say that that's the kind of work for the next time, that you could both minimize the amount of mitigation and replication and show why that might really work. Appreciate the effort to revegetate it there. I think it can be an improvement over what's there now.
I have a question for the board after.
Yeah. Okay, now you'll certainly open it up after I get my
Okay, sure.
my monologue done. So because and right, it is the replication channel, how the water, I think that covers a lot of the stuff there, except it is an interesting issue that Steve brought up, which I've always worried about when you do new wells and other things, what it does to the neighbors' use to shift a wetland there. Luckily, it's not a very large wetland that'll there, and I don't think the buffer zone that will come from that will be very largely changed on the neighbor's property. But I think it is an interesting issue of what you do to neighbors' use rights. It's an issue when people put in wells. Even a bigger issue is where the well is put there. The new well will obviously have a ring of protection that extends onto neighbors. But the rules in general are fairly weak. I think maybe the lawyer here can say otherwise, but I've seen that in general, there isn't a very well-defined law about the fact that you could put a well on the edge of your property, which creates some impacts on your neighbor's property, but that there's no way to control that or to factor that in. And so that's I think a gap in regulatory area that extends to a lot of different issues. But whatever, I think those are some things for you to work on, and Carol, I will let you go now, and then others could say, and then you could respond, John and others, as to whether you feel you're getting direction about what to do for the next meeting. But Carol, why don't you go? Carol, you're muted.
Excuse me. Michael, you made the comment about how will the berm kind of hold the water in that area. And that prompted me to think some more about that, we haven't seen the topography. We don't know what the elevation changes are that are proposed in order to induce the water to kind of go sideways, which I guess is, I can't tell which way that is, maybe north.
Whatever, to the
South,
right.
To the right. And if the elevation has to change in order to make the water go in the right direction, does that involve digging? What happens to the tree roots there? I just think there's so much more detail that we need to see with a mitigation or replication of this kind. And
yeah, but they have to justify, show that it would work, because obviously it's groundwater, and it's a matter of how close to the surface it is. And
exactly,
what would actually,
it appears from the site visit that it's moved higher up and possibly away from the groundwater, right?
Right. Yeah, we'll have to go see whether there's a rationale for how you could do that, that they could come up with, because right, I don't think a lot of civil work in that area is going to be particularly fruitful for the kind of issues Carol just mentioned, if tree roots or just plants, and what it means to go through that whole effort of replicating, which is a bit of work. There's nothing like the natural processes, but hopefully that amount of work can be minimized, that there'll be some thinking about where the berm is or the house. But even if the berm's further out, the house might not need to move as much, but at least create it there and just maybe protect more of the buffer zone to the left and right of the existing wetlands there. So that, because obviously having that is important as well. So more of that protected is part of, and vegetated best, improved vegetation, given what it is now with all the invasives, can contribute. To other people, let's see, I'll let the applicant, any of the applicant team do you feel like you're getting reasonable instructions for moving forward?
Yes, yep. I definitely feel after we have the topo and we'll be able to better define where the replication area will be. It's going to answer a lot of the pending questions. So yeah, I jotted down quite a few questions that the board had, and I'll be able to.
You can work with the agent, you could work with Joyce or us to sort of along the way, if questions do come up
Yep.
about what you're doing, so that so it's not, there's certainly the ability to do some interaction between now and the next meeting so that we can move it along. I have a few other little minor things on the plans, but we can send you a list of some things like just making clear what trees are being cut in the buffer zone.
Yep.
And I guess, I mean, there's some gravel. I mean, we're so focused on the wetland there that there's things like the gravel. I guess that at least you're keeping the gravel. It's nice that the parking driveway extension to the barn is left as gravel, so it's not impervious surface in the buffer zone. So I appreciate that choice of that kind of material that's inside the buffer zone, even though there will be I mean, we need the mitigation back there also, just for the fact that you're creating more impervious. Well, actually, there's a lot of the existing driveway area is already there, so it's already altered. Okay, any other questions from the applicant in terms of issues?
Yes, I
you'd like to
have
hear
one.
about? Sure.
I have one question for you, sir, and I just for my own education. If a man-made well is creating the wetlands, which I strongly suspect that's what was indicated by the state, is it still constituted as wetlands?
Yes, it's not clear to me that it is just driven by the well itself, because obviously there has to be groundwater there that's creating this these conditions here of this isolated wetland. So, but even independent of that, man-made, as I know on my own property, having been, I have somebody that before me, the previous owner created a wetland, but due to the way they constructed things, and I had to live with that. So I could say to you that yes, we can. Man-made things do qualify as wetlands after a while. Yes.
So if the well was, terminated, then that would terminate the wetlands.
It's not clear that would happen, and that would be a whole other activity that you're operating in the wetlands to get a permit for. But I don't think that the well, to be honest, there's probably an interesting hydrologic discussion to be had, but I doubt that the presence of the well per se can just create the wetlands, because obviously there has to be the groundwater there. You can see that it's wet there. You can look down in the well and you can see the water level there. That's there, whether the well was there or not. So it's not clear to me that the well per se is the causation of this. But we could spend a bit of time on that, but I'm not sure that it's necessarily the best use of our time, but if you want to, we could.
No, I'm just trying to understand it myself.
Yeah, it's not
I
clear.
know nothing about wetlands, so.
Oh, no, that's why we try to make it educational.
That's why I'm asking. I'm trying.
Yeah, but in the end, it is what it is now, even whether the well is the source or not. It is a wetland there under the rules, as I can attest from my own experience. Did you have any other question before I let Carol talk? Any other things from you, John, or?
No, thank you. Thank you.
And you're welcome to obviously bring up issues that come up to you, as I said. Carol?
One last thing, as I'm looking at the plan, I realized that there's two different 50-foot no alteration zones. The original one based on the current wetland, and that would include the part of the house is inside of that, and that's the no alteration zone. We didn't really discuss that ordinarily we don't allow that to happen with new construction unless mitigation is addressed. And then I see that there's a proposed 50-foot no alteration. I would just say from a procedural standpoint, we have to consider it. We have to consider the original 50-foot no alteration zone in our considerations here. So that also would include whatever land was filled and turned into lawn in front of the berm there. So I'm bringing that up from the point of view of, we're talking about replication and mitigation, but that looks like quite a large area, and it includes the deck or part of the house.
To that, I'll say that they're removing an existing house that has a significant amount of impervious area in the no alteration zone. That's probably exceeds what they're putting in the no alteration zone. If you see the hatched
Yep.
mark of that south, so that's, and a lot of that is already altered buffer zone. So that's the way I view it. I personally view that the existing house and all the area around it is quite extensive and easily is counterbalances the new construction that's going on there. And that to the extent that there's a lot of altered buffer zone there, even though it's been left, whether that becomes lawn is obviously not the best buffer zone, but there's a lot of poor quality altered buffer zone right now that'll be cleaned up. So from my point of view, I sort of see that as a fairly as a trade-off, but that's obviously something we have to talk about. But I would say I see that as that's why with moving the berm forward and lessening the alteration there will significantly diminish what changes are being done in the no alteration zone.
I think, Michael, the one thing I'd say about that is that to me, the rest of that, even if there's some invasives, the natural buffer zone has much higher habitat value than lawn. So I think that kind of alteration should be considered, and at least it should be measured, and we should know how much that is, and it should be considered in the mitigation.
Yeah. So, but that hopefully the table, on the new table, I guess the guidance that you'd normally it's required for a notice of intent is the table of altered area in the inner 50 and the outer 50, and make sure you just have you should define how much is going to be converted to lawn. Often we get the square footage that's being converted to lawn, so that we can have that for our consideration against the mitigation as Carol's talking. Jacob?
I guess this might be the same question, but I don't see it on the current plan. I don't see it proposed. Here's the extent of lawn area. Is that going to be present on the next version?
That's what we'll be asking for. We would like to see that.
Okay, yeah.
And Joyce will hopefully is keeping good notes of all of this so that we will be able to either itemize this stuff as well and then go back and forth to make sure that we get this stuff in time for the next meeting.
I'll try and put together a list of all the comments and send it out that Francis has an opportunity to look at it.
Okay.
I just have a quick question. Shane did a wetland buffer zone impact analysis. Did he not send that file over?
He did send it over.
Yes. So what Francis, what we're looking for is also just a table that talks about analyze it, existing house in the existing condition, how much is in the 50, how much is in the 100, new house, how much is in the 50, how much is in the 100, do an analysis of driveway, what's existing, what's proposed for pre and post, to give kind of a breakdown of.
Oh yes,
He did provide that, didn't he? I believe he submitted it.
Oh, we're looking at it now. I actually got to go to that page.
You didn't receive it?
No, we got it, except I have to get myself that I did not read. I somehow stopped reading the PDF and didn't realize there was one more page or two more pages. So that's my fault.
Okay, I didn't see that either, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, but just making sure that Shane sent it out.
Yeah, no, we got it, and
okay.
Yes, mea culpa. So that. Okay, we'll get back to you if there's something missing from here about that.
I don't see the lawn area in that table.
Yeah, that normally they put that on the plan. You would just sort of demarcate what you're converting to lawn, and the square footage is the most useful way to do it. So that we know the limit of lawn.
I think most of the lawn is going to be in the rear anyway of the home.
Yeah, no, we only have a limit of how much it's going, because even off to the side, the question is that to the extent that you're doing mitigation, even if the berm moves forward, it's going to be important that some of that, as part of mitigation, that the no alteration zone that is maybe to the right of the wetlands and whatever mitigation, that could possibly be protected, so that if you're taking a lot, or whether you're trying to do lawn all the way up to the property line.
Right.
So just knowing that there's, at some point, the lawn is going to end, whether at a tree line or something, is going to be important for just understanding the extent of buffer zone changes, and whether how much buffer zone will still remain in place. That's a better quality than a lawn.
Yeah, because on this plan, we did have the limit of work and the limit of clearing. But on the next plan, I'll define what is actually going to be the lawn to be planted with grass, and what's going to be other landscaping areas. Because this whole lot is pretty much disturbed. If you, this dark black line, this is the edge of this is the crown of the wooded area. So it's actually further back than this. So this whole area is already disturbed, including the wetland, which was not maintained, which we believe was either in or some plowed field, and then everything just got overgrown with invasives and bittersweet and summer grapes and things of that nature. But in the next plan, we can define what is actually going to be the actual lawn, which is going to be mowed regularly.
Yeah, do that, and what might be, well, it's landscaped versus what might be left more natural buffer zone, let's say to the left and the right at least, of the wetland would be useful for the mitigation that if that's protected, and possibly just have invasives removal, that would make it a higher quality from a biodiversity point of view there. And so that maybe more of that, so that would certainly go a long way to protecting that isolated wetland. If the buffer zone is not all transformed into lawn, because some of it is already somewhat natural now, even if it's riddled with invasives. It could be improved by that. But yes, those kind of show, demarcating that will be very useful. It will be important for us. Other issues before we continue the hearing? Questions? Okay. What time should we continue the hearing to at the, what do we have at the next meeting?
So we haven't put anything anything onto the agenda yet for the next meeting. How long, Carol, do you need land management on the next meeting?
Yes. Is Kelly here now?
You're muted, Carol.
Thanks, Joyce. It's felt to me like maybe we'd only need another 15 minutes or so, but I do think it would be super helpful for Kelly to talk through the budget before we close out that discussion. Because he just has his eye on the budget much more. I mean, I'm not tracking the budget.
So the question is whether we schedule it for 7:45. Do we have any other, are there any other applications come in? What does it look like for the next meeting?
Deborah, I don't believe any came in today. Is that correct? I don't believe it came in today, so.
Deborah, are
No.
you muted? You're muted, Deborah. Maybe she's not there. Okay, do we want to play it safe and start at 7:45 or 7:40?
Are you talking about our next meeting, Michael, or this meeting?
No, the next meeting. I have to move to continue this hearing to the next meeting so that we can then move forward on all this.
Okay.
Michael, there are no other projects that came forth.
Let's do it at 7:40. So we have some time for or 7:45. Do you think we need to have, well, I guess we can do minutes and other things if we need be, and other discussions. Let's do it at 7:45. I move that we continue the hearing on 3 Prospect Street, the notice of intent, to 7:45 on November 17th.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, I, Jacob,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Steve? Steve, you muted.
Yeah, aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
Okay, 7-0. It is now being continued and we look forward to the information and working this out.
Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, nice meeting you.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to, I thought I saw Kelly. I let Kelly in.
I hope you saw him come back.
Yes.
He left though. He was like a spirit. He appeared.
Carrie's quite elusive here.
Yeah.
Okay, he said he hopes to be back in the conversation at 8:30. He said the estimates are high on the high end and there's plenty of money in the budget, or we can put this off for 2 weeks. I think he's gonna try to come back in at 8:30, but he might be a little bit dubious about whether he'll succeed. So he's
No, I see all
that
this.
text message.
Okay, so coming back to let's see, I'm going to share screen to okay, so where we have it is, let's go through one by one, see each of those bullets and see what questions or whether we can move forward on which ones.
Michael, I'm blind. Could you make it a little bit bigger?
Okay, it's really big on my screen.
I have a small laptop screen.
Oh, I get it. You got.
Thank you.
I can make it larger for other people too. There we go.
You know, I would say for context that we have had, it would be great to have Kelly to talk about the budget, but as he commented, there is plenty of budget in the land.
You know, I sort of know that. I agree. I've looked at it a little with him, or from what it's from what he gave us last time, when he gave the
Yeah.
comprehensive thing, that's still in there. There is a significant amount of budget because of the fact that DPW is picking up some of the field work that previously we had to pay for.
Yep.
And so it seems to be a new working relationship that seems to be quite cost effective for the town. And so, but okay, let's go back and revisit each of these things. So let's do some of the all the signage there.
I would say I'm in favor of the signs. I was just curious what the upgrade is. Is it an upgrade to the materials or just like, are they fancier signs?
Well, have you seen the one that's right by the Barber Barn? That's a pretty fancy sign. Have you seen that one?
It was been a while since I saw that
We've
one.
seen it, but we can't remember it.
Well, it's a beautiful sign and it has, you know, it has all this detail about the plants and everything. So we're not going to go, actually, that unfortunately has to be replaced. What it's being replaced with probably won't be quite as fancy, but we, you know, want to have a nice permanent sign there, but then there's a way evidently, and I don't know whether Xenia wants to chime in because she did the research to upgrade the sign. Xenia, do you want to mention what the sign maker said to you? You're muted right
Let
now.
me say, I think I'm on.
Can you hear me? Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
but can you hear us?
I had to close down the computer, restart, do all sorts of stuff, but it seems to work.
Okay, Earth to Kelly works. Go on.
Well, I was just asking Xenia to maybe just describe the sign that we're going to have by the barn. Xenia,
You're
you're
muted.
muted, I think.
There
you
we go. Okay. Okay. This would be a changeable sign. So it would be, you know, we'd have a basic sign with the lists of, you know, describing the garden as a native plant garden and so on. And then we would have a littler sign by it that has slats that we could change. And it might be now in bloom kind of thing. And then you put those up. And it would have to be changed, but it's a more interactive, more interesting approach, we thought.
Okay.
And that's
And
right
then
through the parking
the,
lot.
the plants that are there in the garden would each be numbered, and then you check on the number and you could see what kind of plant it was as well.
And the budget estimate is just a rough one at this point, or is that how refined is that?
Wait, Xenia, are you talking about the self-guided trail signs or? the
No,
sign?
the one by the red barn.
Right, that's not a part of this vote.
No, it isn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was part of the vote. Excuse me. I didn't realize that.
That was something that was asked though, so I was explaining, but it isn't part of the vote.
Okay.
These are, as I understand it, these are the main signs of several different reservations in town. Isn't that correct?
So I guess my question would be, we're going from like 20 something signs in the self-guided trail signs, and we're reducing that to a lot less. We're thinking of maybe 6. And the total cost was not to exceed 1,500. I think probably the question by Courtney and other people, and I'm sorry I wasn't in the last meeting to hear all the details, is basically, does that work out to a cost of like $200 per sign? And what are those signs going to be like? And what's different about them? And I assume maybe you looked into that as well.
Let me chime in with a procedural question about how the commission would like to make these decisions. Because we could go in the direction of wait another meeting, have much more precise costs and designs, or take this as a general direction and delegate basically the final decisions to a commissioner or ultimately probably to the agent, and not deal with the specifics because we could proceed much faster, of course, if we just get the best quote within an outside cost and go do it. This is our best guess. 1,500 is the way outside, and I hope and assume it's going to be a lot less to do these kinds of signs.
I feel like my question was even more simple than that. I'm trying to remember the signs as they were. Were they like some kind of fancy lamination that was like a little bit better than the laminator in my old office could do?
No.
No. Were they metal signs? Like, what's the upgrade?
The upgrade, the ones that were originally put in were pretty flimsy. The signs that were right next to the native garden at the barn were that was very fancy, but we're not talking about that.
Right, I'm talking about the self-guided trail signs. Weren't those like
they were really flimsy, and several of them fell over. I mean, that we don't want to repeat that. If we want to do those signs, we want to have them semi-permanent.
Yep.
Could be an extra expense.
Yep. Got it.
So how do people feel about the procedural question put forth by Mr. Kelly?
I mean, I'm fine with that for like the first 3 items. I'm not sold on putting in a $500 tree because we don't have water out there. And I remember like the native plantings we did next to the barn, it's like very haphazard care. It's a lot of work for one commissioner, and then I don't know what happened after that.
But Courtney, let me reassure you about that. My assumption is that a native tree like that, after 2 years, whatever, is fine on its own. And because it's right next to the parking lot, it would be super easy. Frankly, we have 16 2-gallon kitty litter jugs that we go water other things with. Be easy to pour in unlimited water. The tree will be watered.
Okay. What other people, I have a separate issue of whether that's the good use of the money versus other possible uses of that, but
I'm also a little bit stuck on that.
so why don't other people just speak on the commission for this topic? Just speak up.
Michael, can I comment on the price?
You
First.
can, I guess you can comment on the price and. then
We have a substantial amount of money in the land management account, of which I only know $1,600 is accounted for. Close to 10,000 is unaccounted for. Unlike the special revenue funds, this money disappears at the end of June. So if there is anything nice we want to do, this is a good time to do it because it's unlikely that that money is going to be used.
It's all right. I will say, maybe not the most popular view that, even though I should let others people speak, that I think there's maybe some other, if we look at the inventories, whether something can come up from them that we might want to do. And there's a part of me that says that the reason we have all this money is because DPW has done a lot of work for us. And I don't mind if we return some money to the town in exchange for the fact that DPW has done work that normally we would go out for. So that I'm not necessarily of the persuasion that we have a budget that we have to spend out unless we have particularly good uses for how we spend the town's money. And this might be a good one. The moment I will have some reservations, and I'd also like to see what comes up from the task you talk about of looking at the Hidden Meadow, for example, on the management plan there, and whether things pop up from there that might be a better use of the money. So I'll stop there and let other commissioners speak. Steve, proceed.
Okay, my general inclination, something like this would be to defer the group to studying it more carefully. However, I do share concern about the cost, and also just looking at native plant trust Go Botany site. It says that Eastern red cedar hosts a fungus that forms galls on apples, as many trees have been felled to prevent transmission. So it's just maybe another choice of a tree would be possible too.
I have to tell you, the fungus looks really cool on the red cedars.
Yes.
It looks like it's like orange and looks like Sideshow Bob's hair. So it's crazy, but
aren't
they're already growing all over the area.
Yeah, they're all over Sherborn. They sprout up in my yard.
Yeah, I'm across the street from one of the Douse's orchards, and they're there. So they've been dealing with the fungus forever with their apples.
Okay.
But that's an excellent piece of information you found there. Thank you.
It doesn't kill the tree?
No, it's bad for the apple trees. It's mostly just a cosmetic weirdo thing on the cedars.
And we like weird stuff.
Yeah.
Other commissioners chime in on any of these items here, as well as the process. Whoops, I'll let the commissioners go before I let you go, Sam.
All right.
Just to sort of move things along here with the commission level.
So I think that all the items, except for the tree that we're talking about, all make sense, and in support of all those. The tree one I might actually support also because being right next to the parking lot, it's not something where we could just say, well, don't bother to plant a larger tree, just put a sapling or not, just put a seedling there and put a little fence around it or something. I don't think that would work right next to the parking lot. So it actually doesn't look unreasonable to me.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add, like I think I've heard from others, I certainly don't have issues with the first 3 points. And my question initially about the budget and what was remaining in the budget, sounds like there's a lot remaining in the budget, and in fact, we might not use the whole of what's available. So I guess any concern that I would have had at that cost of the tree might be sort of mitigated by that point. So I'm fine proceeding with procedurally the way Kelly proposed, but also I'd be fine the other way if the commission wants to consider these points further.
You know, I would mention one thing about planting the red cedar is in that meadow area. You know, a few trees have died. There was an apple tree. There was, and then this one close to the parking lot. So I personally like the idea of restoring some of these native trees. It's a mowed area, so something isn't going to just pop up on its own.
Which corner of the parking lot is this? Towards the road, one of the corners by the road or the corner by?
Yeah, it's close to the parking lot. Yep.
Oh, it's close to the road on the parking lot corner. You're talking about?
No. It's between, you mean, is it? No, it's not between the parking lot and the road. It's kind of into the meadow a bit, or whatever you want to call that area, the meadow area.
Okay, so it's further from the road than the whole parking lot.
Yes. It's in the farmstead area is often what we refer to, the grassy kind of meadowy area.
Yeah, I know, I'm trying to picture, I mean, I could picture the different trees there, I just can't picture which one.
The dead one is right next to that split rail fence. It's really kind of unsightly and should probably just be taken down.
Well, that's being taken down, but I guess the question is, I'm just a little concerned of putting something near the road or where there's roads, whatever road stuff and stuff goes off, whether in terms of its chances of success.
No, it's the other corner. It's the corner into the meadow.
Okay, I know, I'm trying to picture that corner. It's whatever it is. It's the corner, not towards the barn, I guess.
Right.
It's the northwest corner of the parking lot. It's
Gotcha.
visible on.
Yeah, that's what I was honing in on. It's where you walk through. There's a little gate
All
there.
right. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say we're spending way too much time talking about a $500 red cedar that several of us are not sure like how this fits into our larger like conservation land management. So I think we should move forward with the other 3 items. And I mean, my opinion would be come back with something else that's more important for like that fits into our plan, because I'm sure we have tons of work that needs to be done. And it's just a matter of getting stuff scheduled before June, right?
And I'd like to see what the inventories, the management.
Yeah,
plan.
we have all these inventories and, you know, let's do something with that.
So okay, but people are okay with the procedure of approving, let's say, the first 3 bullets with these kind of up to budgets without having a more, and saying that they're going to do their best effort to minimize the cost with give the appropriate quality. But are we all, just to get to the procedural question that Kelly raised, we're all happy with the, I think I get the impression that nobody is objecting to giving them these not to exceed numbers, even though they seem quite high compared to what they might spend. Is everybody okay with that? Anybody object to that? Let's put it that way. I see a lot of nodding, which is good. This is the way it goes on at a meeting too. I can get the visual cues. Okay, then it works even with Zoom. Okay, we're little rectangles. I'll go out and I'll say that I will say that I make a motion for the first 3 as worded here. That for the first 3 bullets. Without the last bullet, and we can revisit that one. So that's my motion. as on the screen. Do I have to read it?
Wait, no, but what was the motion about the bullets? Like, we're gonna go
I'm
forward?
I'm moving that the following activities are authorized. I'm literally, it's what's on the screen before us.
Oh, okay, the first, yeah, the paragraph in front, okay.
The paragraph and the first three bullets.
Yep. All right,
Are my motion.
I will second that.
Okay. We can still have more discussion. Anybody
Well,
else?
I
have
mean, one thing I might say is that if you did a straw poll, it's possible that there would be more people in favor of the planting the red cedar than the people who are opposed.
Then we'll come back to that one. I'll just, rather than amend it, I'll just want to go forward with this one.
Okay. Well, if you did the straw
Okay.
poll, I could make a friendly amendment.
Okay, it's all right. We'll get through this and then I'll entertain that separately. I could go either way, but this is my mood at the moment. Okay, any more discussion? Roll
Well, I
call
have a
vote.
question for that, because if we vote this up, then it can't be amended. I don't,
It's okay, we could still make another motion to do the last one, if you like it. After I do a straw poll, we could still have another vote.
okay.
Michael, I. Jacob,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Kurt.
Aye.
Okay. We've got the first three bullets done. Straw poll vote. Okay.
Can I make a comment before the straw poll?
Oh, no, you can't bias people with that. I'm okay.
I bias people a little bit because I'm on the land management task force. It's a small group of volunteers. I agree it would be great to say, hey, let's look at these plans. Let's come up with something that we're going to do for these land management plans, but we're all have to be realistic about volunteer time. And that's why I'm in favor of doing sometimes things that seem small, but they're achievable and they're a positive, and get those things done. If we're able before June to look at all of those plans like Hidden Meadow and say, oh, hey, we should really do this invasive control. We're still going to have to go out, get a consultant, get them going, do it at the right time. So not to be, Debbie Downer, but sometimes I think it's a good idea to do what's achievable when you can do it.
I'm willing to come back to this tree if we don't find easy things that work within the volunteer time. Because I don't know if this idea goes away, as opposed to, from my point of view, since I'll say in my straw poll that I'll say no for now, but I'm willing to reconsider it in the future if other things don't materialize.
Can I say something?
Outstanding.
before we
By all means, it's a straw
vote?
poll. Each person gets to speak.
So is this comment or?
Yeah, go forth and give your vote, yay or nay or why.
Well, I just have, I'm torn between, I don't think the tree is that important to me, but I'm not the groups that are thinking about this. I want to be supportive of the groups that are, spend a lot of time and are actually doing all the work. So that's where I am.
No, I can understand that. I feel a little awkward doing it, what I'm doing, but okay. I think we know
Michael,
where Carol
I'm
stands.
just going to add one more comment because I'm considering planting some red cedars in my yard. And the arborist told me it's much better to plant it in the fall than in the spring. So just throwing that one last time.
I was fearing that would come up.
Maybe we can get a deal on the price if we buy them in bulk.
Wait, you want to go plant it like tomorrow or?
Okay, go on. Everybody else, start chiming in one by one.
So now that I have the spot in question up in Street View and I look at that spot, there should be a tree there. I agree with that, and there's not going to be a tree there other than something like this. So I'd be in favor of just proceeding with it now, especially given the volunteer inclination to support to do it right now.
Next.
Yeah, I'm in favor of doing it now. I think I heard there's maybe $10,000 left in the budget, so it sounds like anything else that might come up later on to do, we'd still be able to do. So I'm in favor of doing it.
Matt and
I'm persuaded by Kelly's passion and advocacy.
okay, boy, I'm feeling so unfriendly. Courtney.
I think the $500 tree is excessive.
We don't know that it's 500. That's the up.
No, we were, boy, while you were, couldn't hear anything. It seems to be a realistic number, given what prices cost, given what Sam said earlier, when you might not have been hearing anything. So it seems to be that we should face the fact that that's probably a realistic number. Yeah, as I said before, I feel like I'm not necessarily the one who feels like I have to spend out the budget. Okay, so we seem to have, what do we got here? Steve, Carol, Jacob, Kurt. Well, okay. So it looks like we have a majority, as Carol was posturing. Oh, not in a bad way. Was posing that this might carry the day, despite what I think. So
I mean, if Carol wants to make a motion, she should go ahead and.
I will then move that the final bullet be included in the actions that are authorized to be carried out at the Barber Reservation. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I wasn't gonna do it.
And I will say under discussion that I know $500 is a drop in the bucket in the town's budget, but I am with Michael on this, that I don't want to just spend money down because the town gave it to us. And I'm probably being influenced by the advisory member in the other room, but.
Close the door, Courtney.
Right. And I'll say that, I appreciate the effort of the land management working group. But so I do want to say that before I vote against this. We'll leave it there. Okay, any other discussion before I do a vote?
Who seconded that?
I
did.
think
Jacob?
Jacob.
Yeah. Okay, roll call vote. Michael, nay. Steve?
May I abstain? Is that fair or not?
People can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's a matter of fairness or not. But okay, we have an
Whatever
abstention.
you feel moved to do.
Carol,
Aye.
Matt,
And
Jacob,
Aye.
Kurt.
Aye.
Okay, I think we got a 4-2-1.
You
Oh, you
didn't
can't,
tell me.
Courtney, I already knew what you were doing. Courtney,
Nay. We
Okay.
have to have at least like one controversial vote, per
Okay.
quarter, because otherwise it just gets boring.
okay.
So
4-2-1.
that's,
Especially over planting a tree, which, theoretically we would all be in favor of, but.
I mean, I'll be the first to hug a tree, but not all of them. So.
Red cedar, I mean, they're very prickly, so I
Yes,
would
I
not
have 'em
recommend
too.
hugging, just wave.
But yes, I do like the things that grow on them too. Okay,
so that's.
we have done
2-1.
that. We are now moving on. To let's see, I'm gonna run through a few little things here. Administrative approvals. Are all of these things here outside of jurisdiction?
Yeah,
Okay, we could try to when we do the agenda next time, let's put in the actual decisions that are made.
well, if they're administrative approvals by definition are outside jurisdiction.
Well, sometimes we have ones that people applied for and we show that they were denied.
I would say that.
Okay, fine. So
Sorry.
22
will-
Farm Road and 40 Great Road. Great Road. Where's 40 Great Road?
Can you?
Great Rock, Great Rock.
Great Rock,
Great
okay.
Rock Road.
Let me stop sharing here.
I did it for you.
Oh, you did? Okay, that's why my screen, because then you covered up my agenda. You affected my screen from a long distance.
I'm a hacker.
Okay, Great Rock Road, we get that right. Okay, 269 South Main Street. 2 concrete piers, that's impressive. 0 Hunting Lane is,
That's the one that they moved everything out of the buffer zone. Now they had to do, the
Okay.
Board of Health asked them to do more testing.
Okay, and 111 Coolidge Street. The far, oh, the,
Yeah, so that's,
Okay.
it's the same barn I looked at before, but they moved it around a little.
okay, so we've done with that. I'm gonna put some minutes up. We can get through the minutes and then we're gonna wrap up with going through the let's deal with the other little stuff. The warrant is the warrant that we're approving here, the one that I saw with the some postage. Oh, Deborah, why don't you just put the warrant?
It is. It is.
Okay, present the items on, that's basically this postage for you, and there's an assessment from Ted Elliman that I guess we have to see that assessment, or whether do we know what that assessment is? That I remember recruiting him.
I think I put that, what it was. It was the McGregor query on plants. Day.
I guess I'll have to go look for it, but okay, that was something I remember we approved a long time ago. And he's a very skilled person, so that was $250. And then there was $60 of other things.
That's a bargain.
Right, so that's the warrant. Okay, there's nothing new on the on the agent hire at the moment. And then I'm gonna put
The
up.
agent should give the beaver report.
Oh, we could have site issues.
So on site issues, we need to schedule a commission site walk for the Dodd property.
For which property?
Dodd.
For Dodd's Ponds.
Are we're gonna do it as a group? Okay, so we don't have time. I mean, I think he's quite flexible. Do we have times? Do we want to try to do it? So we don't know whether he is
Does anybody have any days that don't work like next week? I'm not available this weekend. I don't know what Fred's plans are either, but
I'm
if
out of
there's like
town.
days or times that are not good, I won't offer those.
I'm out of town the first half of next week, Sunday through Wednesday.
Okay.
what do people think about Thursday morning? Or late day?
I probably can't do it Thursday, but that's fine.
Or Friday?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, mornings work better both those days, but either one works.
Because there's so many new members, you might want to pick a day that most of the new members can go so they can see what it's all about.
Yes, it's a tricky issue.
Yeah, I guess we
mean,
should
that's-
probably say what the visit is about.
Well,
'Cause
the
it's not
problem
a
is
standard-
that's not formally on the agenda. I guess we have to go, right. I guess how do we deal with, I guess it's a site issue.
Well, we got an email and we need to go see a site.
Right, this was a site that,
It's not a discussion, we're scheduling something.
right, and we're scheduling a site, so it's hard to explain. I guess we'll have to put some reading up before the site from the from the Silverwood work. Yes, it was a pond that was to some extent impacted by some runoff from another site. And we were trying to deal with how to mitigate the impact of what at the time was an unpermitted activity that created a lot of sediment that went downstream, some of which went into this pond downstream. And we were working on for a long time about how to see what mitigation might make sense there. Now, so mornings are better for everybody. I can't do Friday morning. It happens to be Veterans Day. For those.
I can't do Veterans Day.
Yeah.
So I generally cannot do Monday or Tuesday mornings, but Thursdays are sometimes okay.
beginning to think whether okay, since we have everybody here. So
We
the
want to
next,
do one of those doodles. We could do a doodle to ask
we might
everybody.
have to do a doodle for those days. We might have to just doodle for the next 2 weeks and see what shows up.
All right.
Let's do it as a doodle.
Okay.
And so Joyce, if you do a doodle, if you can do the doodle, or Courtney, just since you don't have to go, basically, so we get the parameters. Should we do 8, 9, and 10 o'clock on the mornings and do like 4 or 5 in the afternoons? Is that, I assume we shouldn't do anything during the day. So we'll just limit it to sort of the next 2 weeks of doing the sort of, is 8 o'clock possibly work for some people? Or is that too early?
Oh, actually, that does work for me.
No,
We'll
that
do
works.
the 8, 9, and 10s and the 4s and 5 for a bunch of weeks. A bunch of days, and we'll see what shows up.
I'll tell you right now, 10 o'clock will hardly ever work for me, but go ahead anyway.
Okay.
Doodles.
Okay, moving on. Any other site issues? Joyce? Okay.
So
Okay, what we have here are, do I have my minutes here? I am going to pull up the minutes so that we can then,
Joyce, we don't need to ratify that permit, do we?
oh, yeah, the emergency permit for the beaver.
right, I'm sorry, you're right. I did an emergency certification for beaver control. And I signed it, and it just needs to be ratified by the commission. Do I put it in the box, or did we vote on it? Or can we just, I think we should ratify it at a meeting.
Yeah, I don't.
I'd like
Well,
to
that's
hear-
what the Board of Health did yesterday. They voted to ratify.
But I can't tell, but are there places for us to sign it once it's ratified?
I signed it.
But
Yeah.
even, okay.
I guess
Good.
you're
Why
just
don't you
not- you're
explain
just
why don't you
recognizing
explain what it
all-
is? Explain what it is, and then we could vote about it.
Well, we saved the life of a beaver, is what we really did.
Yes. Hopefully.
Okay,
For now.
So it was an emergency order to put in a overflow pipe to deceive the beavers so that they can continue on doing what they're doing and it doesn't impact the property around it. And you're going to say to me, Joyce, what property was that? And I've immediately forgotten. So if you hold on one moment.
I will tell you, since I live next
Number
door,
on Forest Street,
Sure.
right?
Yeah,
it's on
it was,
Forest Street.
60 something?
it was 60 something. I mean,
It's
Seven?
Runs through.
it's on Sewell Brook.
Yep.
69
This is
it's
under,
69 Forest Street.
Yes, it's one of the older properties in town. One of our few residents who is a descendant from one of the founders. Yeah, so it's in Sewell Brook in the area before the conduit that goes onto Forest Street, upstream of that. And we availed ourselves of the mosquito control people who actually put it in at no cost to the town, unlike in the past where we've sometimes hire a private company to put them in. Central Mosquito, as part of their work on mosquito control, has now started in the last year or two to offer the service of putting in these beaver deceivers. You can drive by, you can see it right from the road. You could see a big metal cage there that's in the water there that protects an inlet pipe so that the beavers can't block the inlet pipe. And the whole purpose of it is it goes through the dam, this conduit, this black pipe goes through the dam and keeps the water level at a level upstream of the dam that is high enough for the beavers to be happy, but not go any higher than it is currently. Otherwise, beavers will tend to just keep damming it up more and more and more. And so it keeps getting higher and higher. This is a way to find a negotiated level that the resident there's no impact on septics or other things. So it's a way of creating a nice compromise with the beavers at a level that's tolerable for the humans that surround them. the beaver pond. The beaver ponds are famous for their sort of, well, I guess they're called a capstone species, and the fact that the habitat is useful for so many different animals. So it's just across the street from me.
Question is right across the street from me almost too, and it's closer to you, Michael. But how are these decisions made ahead of time? Is this usually come before the conservation board or?
No, beaver removal permits come through the Board of Health actually. And when they say remove the beaver, they trap it and they drown it. Which they will try to tell you is humane, but it's not. And those are emergency permits, issued by the health agent. But this, because they were putting in, my understanding, Joyce, is because they're doing the beaver deceiver and they had to do a little bit of work on the dam to get that in, that required our sign off. They weren't removing any beavers.
Right. Well, they were doing work they were doing work to the dam, correct?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
they're still affecting, what Michael described as a keystone species and the size of whatever wetland they create. That's not something that comes before the Conservation Commission before they put those in. I'm asking.
Well, the reason it was an emergency order through the Board of Health because it was in danger of damaging public health, a septic system adjacent to it. So
usually people's septics are getting flooded.
Right. And so there really wasn't time to, they convinced the Board of Health, or they presented credible information that it was a danger. So they issued an emergency order. So in response to their emergency order, we issued an emergency order to actually do the work in the wetland.
And this is the WPA emergency certification, Joyce, that's what you signed?
I think it's emergency notification, yes. Emergency certification, yes.
Yeah, okay, so that's the one that we're expected to respond or to do within 24 hours or something like that.
Right, and they did the work within a day of my issuing it.
Yeah, it is, as to Steve's question. This activity is trying to think of the path in the past, whether if they well in advance can come to us with some sort of notice of intent or something like that. I can't remember, there's this whole, what the regulatory setup is for if it wasn't done under an emergency.
Well,
I can't remember.
I think we had one where,
We had it in the past.
yeah, where they removed the beaver, they murdered the beaver, they breached the dam, but it was like a small breach, and I think if they wanted to do more work on it and possibly drain the area more, we had asked them to do an NOI because the immediate emergency was abated.
Yeah,
So
there's a whole, we could dig up the flow diagram for this. We could dig it up at some point. There's some chart we did in the past about this whole issue there. But I can't say enough now, and we need to move on. But we could go revisit that as to what it is as the regulatory structure, Shia, if you're not doing it through an emergency process. But that's a good question that I can't answer.
This was the first emergency that I think we issued this year. There might have been, I think this is the first one we issued this year.
Okay, I move that we approve the emergency order to install the beaver deceiver at Sewell Brook at 60, whatever, 8 or 9 Forest Street.
I second that.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, aye. Steve?
I'll abstain.
Kurt?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Okay.
You forgot me.
Court Carroll. It's getting late.
Jeez, it was Courtney. Now
Oh, he
who?
doesn't even know who we are, right?
Some C thing. Carol?
Aye.
Okay, 601. Moving on to minutes. Let's get that so we can get to the tree thing here. Let's see, since we catch up on minutes. I will make it larger now that I know. How's this size for people? Larger?
A little larger.
I see Matt squinting, so I'll have to go. Is that good enough or should I go more?
Can you make it wider on your screen?
Well, wider doesn't help because you already, I assume you see the whole width of the line. Does everybody see the whole line? Wider doesn't make it any bigger, just moves it.
Okay.
I must say, looking at this, that there's a trend of people requesting at the last minute to use the barber. I don't know whether we need to kind of
That
pause.
was not last minute. That was my fault. He
Oh.
called me like around COVID time and
Okay, moving on. Keep reading, guys.
not a trend. That was my fault.
Sorry to cut you guys off.
Michael, are you noticing that under the 7:13 PM hearing, the third line, which starts with commissioners and Mr. O'Leary, that there's quite a large double space there before the word agreed?
Dealt with.
And then where it says in the first bullet, and 75% of the proposed shrubs is required. In addition, all exposed soils will be to be stabilized. That needs to be deleted, to be. And then in the pre-construction meeting with contractor, engineering and owner would be help prior to commencement of work. Maybe it would be helpful prior to commencement of work.
Will be held.
Held. Okay, thank you. There should be a period at the end of the bullet that starts with the word trees. And I think the same for the next, but you have to scroll up.
Can I move up for everybody?
Sure.
Can you fix the spacing with the bullets there, or is that a page break where there's a
Break.
I don't know if you care, this is kind of picky, but in the top bullet, new shrubs will be removed. There's wood chips as 2 words and wood chips as 1 word. I think it's 2 words. And then in the 165 Washington Street, the third bullet. I think maybe the word "that" should be removed at the beginning of the sentence and capitalize the I and if. Can you scroll up, Michael?
Is everybody else okay? Okay. People okay, scrolling?
Yep.
Yep.
It looks like the last bullet needs a period at the end of it after snag. Right there at the top of the page now,
No.
Mike.
I'm getting there. And I noticed there's a font change. We'll see if we clean it up. Not gonna do it now.
I don't have anything else on this page. Is Deborah, are you the one who writes our minutes now?
It's a mixture.
Yes. Whoop.
It's a mixture. You go on. Yeah. I'll go
Oh,
on.
Yes. Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, and I want to comment that you're doing a great job.
Oh,
Because
thank you so much.
I feel
You have a
that
lot of
the
experience.
quality has improved.
Good.
There's an O there that should be a 0 right at the top of the 0 Washington Street.
Good work, Coder.
Good catch.
Okay. While I clean this up, somebody make a motion and somebody do the roll call vote and everything else to approve the minutes as edited. While I save some stuff here.
I move to approve the minutes as edited.
Second.
Courtney, can you do the roll call?
Sure. Courtney, I. Jacob,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
and Mr. Lesser.
Aye. Okay. Moving on. Last item here. What I've pulled up here is what Jacob sent out as a draft. And there's my set of edits on this thing here. On the tree policy, removal policy. There's a lot of little things that Jacob and I can go over in terms of whether people have, how many have people actually read this carefully besides me? Question is whether I will go to a few. Well, we could have a procedural issue, but I will go to a few substantive issues.
Can you make it a little bit bigger?
By all means.
Before we do
Someone
that, do we
else
want to can we skim through and just, or can we not skim, can we talk through just a few of the things that changed since the last meeting, since it sounds like a bunch of us haven't read this, that I could speak to, and then come back to the substantive questions. Let's see. So one is that on the in this buffer zones things that they're defined by flood levels. I think the difference there is that in the town regulations, there is a buffer zone around the bordering land subject to flooding, and I was only looking at the state one, so I think that change makes sense. Let's see. Then we'll come back to this question of, are we limiting the policy to buffer zones only or not? That's the next couple of proposed edits here are in that category. Keep going. Keep going. These are, yeah, there's more buffer zone versus jurisdictional area questions. Okay, so this section, the tree mitigation requirements and conditions. So I added a definition of a canopy tree, and this is just my, this 40 feet or more seems to define the break between a bunch of the trees that I put at the very end around suggested types. It doesn't appear that there's a strong reason for these particular values of 40 feet and 20 feet. But the idea is if you're removing a large tree, you replace it with a large tree. If you're removing a small tree, any kind of tree is fine, as long as it's a native tree. And then I added the notions around, you can ask for exceptions when it doesn't make sense for the property if you have a complete canopy or already have saplings that will replace it quickly. The next section down there, then B, we move shrubs to being, you must request that you want to use shrubs instead. It's not an automatic like it was in the Lincoln policy. Then let's see. We have another substantive question around, we talked last time about smaller trees being more successful planting, but it sounds like we didn't quite converge to what we wanted those to say. So we'll come back to that. Let's see, can you scroll down to the next page? Okay, so here we made a few little wording changes. I still have the approximate distance to wetlands if no, but I put the if known. I assume it will be useful in the field to have the agent or whoever is looking at it to scribble some notes there or something of that form. So that's why I left the column there. And then can you scroll down to the next page? Okay, so this mitigation I just updated to be the same definition as before, and I in the description of the sketch or map, I removed anything that talked about trying to note where the buffer zones were, and tried to clarify that that approximate is fine. I did leave the suggestion of you can print out a plot plan if you want, but I put the hand-drawn sketch first in that list, or in that suggestions. Then let's see. So these are the suggested trees and shrubs. This is basically, I started from the Lincoln set, and I pared down the shrub list quite a bit because it's sort of, it's de-emphasized in what we're wanting people to look at here. And then I also tried to split them into canopy trees versus understory trees. Understory is probably not quite the right definition because some of these want full sun with that, not under a canopy, but I'm not sure that's the most important thing to worry about right now. Open to suggestions there. It might make sense to ask what's missing from the canopy trees here that at least that are common in Sherborn. So things that are missing are hemlocks because they have the a couple invasives, so you can't move them around now. Ash trees, same thing. Those are missing for the same reason, and anything in the hickory family is missing because apparently you need to grow those from seed in place. You can't really transplant them because they have a big giant taproot. So none of those make sense for mitigation plantings. In terms of understory trees, I put a few here. We could add one of the cedars to this list if we want. But any other comments from people looking at these lists?
I mean, among canopy trees, I think I have a pin oak on my property.
Oh yeah, yeah. There are definitely more types of oaks than we
Yeah.
have listed here, and also there are more types of maples around than are listed here.
Mhm.
I don't know how many of those you can actually find in nurseries. I haven't looked.
Oh, good point. Yeah, I have no idea if you can find like pin oaks in nurseries. Probably not.
I've only noticed white oaks and red oaks in the nurseries, but I wasn't looking specifically for the other types.
Mm.
So we just want to have a generic wording, consider just a generic wording as well as other.
Sure. Yeah, I think that works. And there are other kinds of poplar trees that are around. There are like 3 or 4 different types, but I don't think we want to try and list all of them because again, I don't know which ones you can find in nurseries.
Well, do we want to suggested? I guess these are suggested.
Yeah. But I think this list we could edit in the future without.
Right, yeah, no, I'm just trying to think of whether to change the title to say that it's just suggested example or suggested something to make it seem like the list is less exhaustive than it is. I'm not sure what word would go in there that would make it.
Right, but right now that's in the next line.
For more.
Just one per understory tree wetland. It's shadbush or juneberry. It's a nice
Yeah,
one.
that's the same plant as a service berry, I think.
Yes,
It's the same.
is it there?
There's a couple
sometimes
different species of.
There's
Amelanchier.
sometimes shrubs and there's sometimes trees.
Yeah,
depending on the variety.
there's other species of Amelanchier, so and they're all
But some
lovely.
are wetlands. They like wet feet anyways. They're not just a dry.
But these are
Yeah.
going to play, these are going to be in the buffer zone.
Do we
Right.
want to put like dogwood? Because, well, at least on my property, they pop up on their own and they're a nice
Yep,
one.
dogwoods would absolutely make sense. I wasn't sure which kind of, there are lots of different kinds, so I wasn't sure which kind to suggest here.
I mean, I'm thinking of, what is it, the Latin name Cornus florida? So that's Eastern
Yeah,
dogwood?
that's
American?
that's the like classic one, but there's also, I see he has a racemosa there, but there's like silky dogwood, like any of those are good.
Yeah.
And they're
all
no
of-
longer Cornus.
You don't
But-
want the, I'm blanking on
Yeah,
the
you
name.
guys can send in suggestions.
Yeah,
The 3 of you can put your heads together and see what you want to do on this list.
So I think for this list, we should just plan on editing it in the future.
We could keep changing it. There's nothing wrong with changing it here.
And okay, so on this page, everything here is new. So the 3 questions that I probably want to view this as it would be viewed rather than as the sort of showing changes view for this one. So the questions are just the clarifying that there's no fee for these views. And also trying to say, if you don't know where the wetlands or buffer zones, just list your trees and we'll figure it out. And then an extended discussion of the some more reference links to the emergency procedures that the state defines, and the
Just trying to, sorry. I was just trying to, oh. Oops.
And so on the list of nurseries, this is, I believe, the exact same list that Lincoln listed. So if there are other ones that are closer to us that we should list instead, we should make those changes. I have never been to the Bigelow nurseries that's on this list, but I have been to the other, well, or I've been or heard of the others. I haven't been to wetland plants, but.
Sorry, I don't know how to use this stupid.
I think those are the closest ones, actually, and I have been out to New England plants. The Garden in the Woods and New England wetland plants have the biggest selection of native plants. It's kind of hit or miss at the more commercial nurseries.
Yeah, the other one that's close would be like Lovell's in Medfield, but they don't have a good native plant section, so I didn't want to.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
It's in Medfield, right? Anyway.
Yeah, Lovell's is in Medfield, yeah. But I agree with you.
I mean, we don't want to get in the business of, we have to qualify this somehow. Because we have to be careful about, as a town entity, making recommendations.
Well, I agree with Michael, but Weston Nurseries actually does, I think we're on safe ground there because they actually make their plant list available online, and
we could even omit this list and refer them to the Grow Native Massachusetts website, which maintains a list of plant and seed sources for natives.
Well, we can put in the website. I don't mind keeping the list here as long as we just put something like some suggestions are. Put in link to, what is it called?
Grow Native MA.
Fine, we'll put that in there and we'll just put some qualifier in front that's just some suggestions. Okay, let's go back. Is that all you wanted to do, Jacob, at this point on this document before we go back to the substance?
Yes.
Other substantive issues. Okay. Here you can see in red that I thought we agreed that basically that for a policy, we can do stuff in the buffer zone that are dangerous and things like that, but I don't think we want to deal with a policy without a more formal permitting for anything that's actually in the resource area. I think that's pushing the limit of how to comply with the regulations. So I tried to reword this that we're dealing with trees located in the buffer zone. I don't know if people feel differently, but that's, I think, what's safest to do for a policy, or appropriate to do for a policy.
I think I would agree with you on that, Michael.
That's fine with me, and we can see how this ends up being used in practice and see whether there's even a reason to consider anything else.
I think it's reasonable to what Jacob said. I mean, I for a dead tree that's threatening someone's house, I know we have a lot of houses in town that are on top of wetlands. You know, maybe there's a need.
Less likely that they're right in the wetlands, but we'll see how many times it shows up.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But don't forget, we've had some that are in weird locations, like right on the property line or something where it is in the wetlands. So I agree with this. I think this is good.
Okay, then other substance wise is on the mitigation. Somehow I thought I have in my notes that we're talking more of this 0.3 here. That at the time we were trying to figure out size of tree, how you define it. whether we wanted to find something that's a mixture of 1.5 inches caliper or about 8 to 10 feet in height. Whether that's the kind of start we wanted, whether that's still trying to balance. I mean, I used to want larger trees, but I gather the point of that we want to have trees that have a greater chance of survival. So, but I thought the 8 to 10 feet and 1.5 inches was sort of fit in that category of a tree that will still have a good chance of surviving. And at least it gets a little more of a head start.
Hey, Michael, probably because I just was looking in my yard today and saw that the deer had eaten a whole bunch of little shrubs that I had planted. I think that it may be wise to keep to the 8 to 10 feet because it gives the tree a chance to get up above the browse line before it gets hammered by deer. And since they are being planted in a buffer zone, hopefully they would, have more consistent moisture than a tree that is in the middle of, somebody's lawn and has to be watered. So I think there's a good reason to have the bigger trees.
What do others think?
That's basically the tree that we were proposing to put in at the barber.
Well, we're not talking about the barber right now.
I don't
I-
understand what that is supposed to mean. I'm just saying that's a $300 to $500 tree.
Oh,
I thought the barber tree was,
well, the alternative, from what I can tell, because I'm trying to get some trees installed in my house, at my house, is it looks like 8 to 10 feet is the typical thing that they sell at these nurseries, or then you get down to one of those small container plants. And
there's not much there's not that much in the middle.
Yeah.
It depends on what you find.
you have to realize this is only in the case of where
Yeah.
live tree that's being cut. This is not this is the minority of cases. Will this even, this mitigation?
So I was going to ask about that because I think at the top, we said this policy applies to dead or dying trees. And then here, and we're saying the loss of live trees.
So, but the as above here, I'll move. It says dead or dying or live trees where they're split. I mean, it's not clear that it's split. We're calling it, what's it word? Damaged trees that are live.
Okay.
That's where that's where this kicks in, is only when you're also taking down live trees that are damaged. Let's see, dead or dying. I guess it's the dying part.
And we're talking about live trees that are damaged, that are posing a threat.
Right.
Okay.
If it has a structural defect, so like, there's a lot of pines that are, what's it
It's
called?
dying or has a structure that may cause the tree.
Wait,
That's-
actually, in that applicability, A parent, the believe a dead or dying tree, dying doesn't seem to encompass the full
I agree.
category.
I added that in there because I wanted to be dead, dying, or something, right? I was trying to, because I was trying to limit it.
Well, actually, I'm not sure we need that we need anything there at all, because.
Yeah, because it's defined in B.
Right.
Yeah, I felt like it was just left it too open-ended of not having some adjective, but I guess we can get rid of the adjective.
Yeah, I think it's clear to leave it out of A and leave it in B. That's much clearer to me as I look at that.
Okay, done.
So, and just so I understand, so if a tree is live, but it has a structural defect and it presents a threat to, I guess, the house or to people who would be on the property. So we're requiring mitigation, we're requiring the planting of live trees, of new trees. And so how does this play out? Just because then folks have to decide, I guess, how to go forward with that. I mean,
I mean,
know
the
what I'm
science
saying?
is that, the science is that it's a lot that provides canopy, it's alive, therefore we want to replace the canopy or whatever function it is for the buffer zone, whereas a dead tree has less of that kind of function. So they would
Perfect,
have, so therefore they would have to do some sort of, I mean, they could request that it's, I mean, we wrote below that if they can ask for an exemption.
Right,
Are
okay.
you asking more about the procedure, sort of how they would go about doing it? Or are
Yeah,
you
no, I
asking-
forgot. I did look at this earlier and I forgot that there was that piece about the exemption. I was just more curious about a position where someone might have some trees that pose a threat and they find out they're going to have to spend a couple $1,000 putting in new trees if they take these down, and they might just say, forget it, I'm not doing that. Like I'm not taking the trees down then. And if that's what we wanted to do, but if I forgot about the part with the exemption, so I think that probably satisfies that.
I feel like too, most of the requests we get are dead and dying trees.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I agree, we needed to leave ourselves an out, because maybe there's a situation where it really does not make sense, you know, to put in another tree, and we can't anticipate right now what that might be.
So the question is, what are we doing here? Are we doing 1.5 and or about 8 to 10 feet? Is that what we're putting in here instead of 1 inch or greater? 1.5 inch.
1.5 makes sense. I'm thinking about the understory trees. If they're in the cases we are permitting those, if you're even going to find those in the. Well, okay, so here's two things that this won't work for. So you won't be able to go to Garden in the Woods and buy these because they'll all be smaller. Or I'm not actually sure about New England wetland plants, whether they would have trees this large.
Yeah, New England wetland plants, when I've gone, their plants are even smaller than Garden in the Woods.
You mean the saplings are really?
I've
What do you think?
I've got mostly shrubs from them, but they were pretty small.
But what trees do they have? What are they looking at?
They have all the trees that we'd be, or maybe all but one, all but one. But the advantage to those is those are things that an individual could go and visit and see see the whole collection of what's native and what's not at both of those vendors.
I mean, so 8 to 10 requires, I mean, I'm rethinking it because 8 to 10, you can't just do it on your own.
You can't do it on your own.
You have to go to like a commercial nursery and get one of those balled and bag trees. It's a big deal. If you want people to really be encouraged to do it, you can go to Garden in the Woods, which is nearby. And I don't know that it's going to have that caliper, but like you could buy a tree that's, 5 or 6 feet tall.
And that's probably only about a 1 inch caliper.
Yeah.
I would say one thing about the Garden in the Woods, though, they don't actually have a very big selection of trees, right, Courtney? I mean, when I'm there, it's not very big.
Very hit or miss.
Yeah, it's very hit or miss.
I guess it depends. I mean, this year, I want to say I saw almost all of the trees on that list.
And how were the trees like? They were basically 5, 6 feet tall?
Yeah, depending on the tree.
So
Yeah.
and they were probably less than 1.5 inches in caliper.
I mean, some of them may have been even taller. Like at the end of the season, I was debating whether or not I could fit them in my Subaru with like the window open, but.
What is a number 15 nursery container? I was wondering to myself if that's the size that they use at the Garden in the Woods.
That's a pretty big one. That's a 15-gallon container. I would guess that the Garden in the Wood ones are probably more like the 7-gallon ones. So I haven't.
Okay, so what's practical here between the fact that we could go to a route of wanting 1.5 or more, or they can do 2 little saplings and hope that 1 or 2 of them will survive, or both. We could also just start with smaller, give them an option of one larger or two of the smaller ones that are easier to get and do yourself, is I'll throw that out as an option.
I mean, I tend to think for this, for what we're trying to do, making it easier for people to comply is part of our goal.
Yep.
And therefore err on the side of sizes that are easily obtainable and movable by homeowners. I don't have a strong opinion about whether it's a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1.
I don't know, I'll just throw out there that we can give the choice of a larger one or two smaller ones.
I kind of like that idea because this is probably so informed by how many things have been eaten by deer in my yard, but I think there's such a good chance that at least one of those smaller ones is just going to be hammered unless you put a wire fence around it. They love the native trees and shrubs.
Yeah, I can't say if they're eating the trees, although they must be desperate. They're eating the tips of my little buckthorn shoots. But we do have that we want them to grow for 24 months. We could put here suggested, we could put here, maybe we add something in here about whether we want to put in a parenthetical comment, protection is suggested. We can word that better. I don't want to do the wordsmithing now unless somebody else wants to, but whether we just stick in a little note here that we put in a phrase about, we suggest something.
Here,
such as a little fencing or whatever you call it.
Deer, yeah, not deer fencing.
deer fencing is suggested
No,
until.
deer fencing's too big. We're just talking about that little.
Oh,
little
yeah,
cage that you put around it, whatever it is.
If you start it with just saying deer protection is suggested, you know, people can make their choices.
Yep.
Whatever it is, we can come up with something here. Okay, let's go back and get this thing done, because I would suggest that I have a procedural question after that. Let's clarify, let's work out 3 so we can figure out how we're finalizing this. So I think that's the only outstanding issue here. Do we want to go back to just simply one 1-inch tree and that's it? Or do we want to do 2 or one bigger? Let's go vote around here. Matt, what do you think?
I'm in favor of the 1-inch tree. I hear you on the 2-to-1, but I think it's just for ease of homeowner ability to do it themselves and, you know, trying to get them to do what we want them to do. I'm inclined to go with the 1-to-1 in the 1-inch.
Okay, Kurt?
Yeah, I agree with that. What Matt said.
Okay. I'll make my, well, I already made my position of the 2-to-1 for small. Jacob?
I'm in favor of the 1-inch trees. I don't have a strong position around whether it's 1 or 2.
Steve?
I think I feel about the same as Jacob does.
Okay, we definitely have the ones, but the question is how many? Carol, Courtney, start chiming in.
I mean, I think I kind of like the idea of giving them the option of either 1 of the bigger trees or 2 of the smaller ones. And that's just being realistic about survival.
Okay, we're at a 2-2-2 vote. Courtney, you're the deciding vote between a 2-2-2, as I hear it.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, the pressure's really on,
I will say that
unless somebody else wants to shift.
even putting in 2 small canopy trees, saplings is not, it's going to be so long before it makes up for the loss of the tree. So I guess I don't feel like it's a huge hardship to be able to pick up 2 trees and two small trees from Garden in the Woods, let's say, is still going to be less than the size of tree initially proposed.
So you vote for the 2 smaller, 1 larger.
Yeah, I'm gonna push a little and say, let's ask for a little bit more because it's
So,
not even
okay.
gonna make up for what was lost.
So there's 3 of us who want that. There's 2 who are stuck in the middle and 2 who are just 1-to-1. Do we, are we okay with, people gonna be okay if we go with the 3? The people who want the 3 and do the 2 smaller or 1 larger?
What's the 3, to be clear? What do we?
No, I'm saying the 3 was me, Carol, and Courtney are pushing the idea of 2 1-inch trees or 1 1.5-inch tree.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that, Michael.
I'm with that too.
Okay, fine. So we're clearly outvoting you, Matt, even if you haven't shifted your gears yet. Hopefully you can sleep tonight. Okay. So we're gonna have something that'll get reworded. Of to 1-inch or 1 to 1-inch or greater, blah, blah. We'll work out the wording now. So let me just, before I do any more effort on this thing here, do we want to, we've been waiting a long time for this thing, but we could go through, Jacob and I could go through all the little wordsmithing that I came up with, or if he has any questions about mine. And he can clean up a few places here, and he can produce one clean final version of this, one final draft that he'll send out, and everybody has to promise to read it before our next meeting, because we will vote on it without spending time, with only taking time for comments that people have on it. So that it's a quick process at the next meeting, which we will have time, and we could have discussion since there's time at the next meeting. But I would suggest that we just get a finalized, all the words here done, and everybody reads it carefully from a clean version. And then we could vote on it next week. And everybody reads. Is that a good procedure thing versus voting on it tonight? I mean, I could say if we accepted all the edits I did or whatever else, I'd vote on it tonight, but I don't mind waiting 2 weeks where everybody does one more read of a new version that will be sent to you within the next few days.
I think that's good. It'll be nice to see the clean version. Everybody will see the final wording for the trees we just discussed. I think that works, Michael.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what'll happen. Jacob, you've done a wonderful job. You'll take this version. I don't know, did you have other things besides what we're looking at, the version we're looking here? Because I thought you said there were some other issues
I don't
besides this
so.
draft.
I mean, I think what we should, yeah, I mean, because you have this copy, so I think what we should do is just accept all the edits that we've got in here, and then and see what looks wrong formatting wise, because it looks different than, and then we'll.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, I know where it's for, but this, I just want to, I just want to put the wording here because this has to just be, some of the stuff just needs to be cleaned up. I'm just getting in a placeholder on this stuff here. Okay, well, you can do that. This version is going to be here online. You could just download it. This is just the version that has the MCL initials at the end. So it's already saved here. So you can take it, download it, clean it all up, put it back up. And well, you could send, you can call, you could let me know if there's anything you had questions about. And then you can clean it all up. Okay. Then we have successfully almost gotten across, finished with this thing. Okay,
Right.
good. What
I
else
mean,
do-
I give 99% of the credit to Jacob. This has been on the to-do list for so long. So this is great. Be ready to vote next time,
Oh, yeah, we are voting next time.
for sure.
I guess I'll stop sharing here, so who knows what'll show up as I start changing things here. Okay, going back to the agenda. Announcements, minutes we've done, all right, we've done that. Oh, yes. Request for determination of applicability applications. is the last item left on the agenda here. And we could put up, I mean, could put up what you sent in, Carol, or whether there's any comments you want to make about it. What do you want to do? How do you want to do
I'll
this?
be happy to have you put it up, and I put some kind of key points from it so people wouldn't have to read through the whole thing, but certainly everyone is welcome to read through the whole thing. Can you make that bigger?
How's that size?
Works for
Bigger?
me. So,
Is that okay?
I
Yeah.
can see it, yeah.
so this came up because of the discussion we had where I really thought, wait a minute, what is the correct procedure for using negative determinations? Because basically, when there's a request for determination of applicability, it's asking the commission, is this impacting a wetland? So when you do a negative determination, we're basically saying we don't, with the following conditions, we don't have jurisdiction over it. We're basically saying, no, it doesn't impact the wetlands negatively. So I wanted to go back and look and see exactly like what kind of guidance the regulations give us about when to use those negative determinations and when not to use negative determinations. So interestingly, in our own regulations, we're not that explicit about it. Under Sherborn regulations, a negative determination can be issued when the proposed project will have quote unquote minimal impact on resource areas. That gives a lot of latitude for us to think about it on the local level. Having said that, though, the MACC guidelines are much more explicit, and that's helpful because that's the state guidelines, which we always should adhere to. Sometimes, usually it's municipalities can be more restrictive than the state, but you can't be less restrictive than the state. So under the Massachusetts regulations, according to the MACC guidelines, you should use negative determinations. Whoops, can you go back up, please?
I was reading I was going up to the Massachusetts one.
Oh, thank you. No, come back up to the top because I actually summarized.
Okay, fine. Sorry about that.
Yep. So you use negative determinations. The first is where it's obvious that compliance with simple conditions will protect the resource areas. So it should be just obvious that these are very simple and that'll be protective enough. Secondly is if there are only 2 or 3 conditions and they say explicitly that, and I don't know how we usually do this. We probably do it in a letter or something, but it says, on the form where you check the -3 determination, you should be able to list the conditions right there. And they later on in this document, I quoted how they said you should do that. And then you can look at some criteria in a table that they have. The other thing that they're super clear about, negative determinations with conditions should be issued very cautiously. And the reason for that is that you just don't have the same regulatory authority. And essentially what they say is if it comes down to having to enforce it, you've given up your enforcement authority because you've said, as long as you meet these conditions, everything's fine. So it makes it harder. Now, having said that, it did say that if it's not complied with, you can go back and require an NOI. So if we want to, we can go down a little bit now, Michael. That's the summary. So then, like I said, it was so helpful. The environmental handbook from Massachusetts Conservation Commissioners, that's where I took this. And so I quoted, sections of that handbook. So it basically says a positive DOA is required if work is proposed in a resource area. This means a notice of intent is required. Small projects may not have an adverse effect. If simple erosion control measures are taken, a negative DOA may be issued with conditions in cases such as this, where it's obvious that compliance with simple conditions will protect the resource areas. So basically they talk about simple erosion control measures are all that needs to be taken. And then the standard is will the activity in the buffer zone alter the resource area, which is kind of a standard. So this is the part, Michael, I thought this was interesting. This next paragraph where it says a conditional negative DOA may be issued by adding on Form 2 after the wording for negative box toward the, provided the work is completed in compliance with the following conditions. And it does say the commission retains the right to require an NOI if the conditions are not followed. Goes on to say the commission takes a risk when a negative DOA is issued and should weigh the decision carefully. They should be issued very cautiously. If there are more than 2 or 3 conditions, a positive DOA should be issued and an NOA required. It's hard for a commission to go to judge for enforcement when it's already said the permit is not required and therefore it has no jurisdiction. Then there's this certain categories of work entirely within the buffer zone are eligible for a negative DOA if they meet certain criteria. So some of the criteria are, it's a small area in bullet 1, that is left at least 50 feet of undisturbed vegetation between the project and the resource area. It has to conform to DEP stormwater management policy. It doesn't border on a vernal pool, a tributary to a public water supply, or certain ACECs, which I did not look up, so I'm not sure what that is. It is not in estimated wildlife habitat, and erosion and sedimentation controls are provided at the edge of work. So you can see that they're basically saying, you know, when there are these, you know, when the habitat is very sensitive, you don't want to use it. If the commission determines the presumptions do not apply, you can actually, I think it's when it does apply, you require a notice of intent. In other words, oh, no,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
they
It's like
got
a
it wrong.
negative thing. Yeah.
Sure.
So if any of these things don't apply, do whatever. I can't do the double negative, but you know what it is.
Yeah.
It says the commission should not allow this policy to be distorted into a license for negative determinations for all work in buffer zones. So it's clearly MACC has seen commissions who say, oh, well, if it's in the buffer zone and we kind of think it's limited, then it's okay to use the negative. They're saying, no, this instead, you should regard it as something you do fairly seldom and only if there are 2 or 3 conditions. Once we get past 3 conditions, we have to require an NOI. So I thought this was super useful because, you know, whenever we make decisions, sometimes it's hard to remember what are kind of the bright line rules. And, you know, we turn to MACC for those. So I think this might be something, I kind of set this up, Michael, so that this is like an informational sheet that we can have available to us when we're considering things. I remember talking to the agent in Lincoln, and she had a number of these kinds of sheets to just as like a reminder, so you don't have to go back and do the research.
Well, in our online folders, we have a folder for separate from the meetings. If you go one level up from the meetings for 2022, there is a folder called regulations. We'll put this in that regulations folder there so that we can pull it up, because we often have these discussions as in the historically, for the new people don't know that often the agent brings up a site issue, is the question of, here's a site, here are the issues. Do we require an RDA or an NOI? And so that's a topic that often comes up, and this can be used as guidance for when we have to make those decisions on that. And we could also use it when we have RDAs that have been filed, because sometimes they just want to file the RDA and see how that goes. We can use it from there and how we interpret it. I think this is the way most of how we've been doing it all along the way, in terms of how we had those discussions there. It's just a little more formalized here. I'll just make the comment that, right, they say generally there's 2 or 3 conditions, right? We generally try to keep it to 3 conditions. but we have occasionally gone beyond 3 when we thought it was appropriate. So it's not, I don't think we generally go beyond the 3. As opposed to, at times we wrestle with it to see what makes the most sense, especially, I mean, it gets tricky when you're dealing with buffer zone that is already already altered. And that is where we sometimes gets a little, we can go a little further because of the fact that it's just lawn and going up in there, but we'll find out when we start looking at these things, and we use this as a part of our lens for making.
One of the suggestions that came up in one of the other MACC class, it's sort of those intro classes, was when you're, especially when you're looking at septic system replacements, is be hesitant to add conditions or to ask for many changes, because it's almost always better than what was there before if it's assuming it's existing, replacing an existing system. And there's also often an ownership transfer, so tracking down any of the conditions in the future is unlikely to work well, to work effectively.
Yeah, that's why we have a special section under the RDAs just to deal with septics, because we recognize the fact that a lot of septic systems are already in altered areas, and they are, as you say, improvements. So that's something that was added, we added to the regs a bit ago, that deals with the fact that septics do pose are an important issue for us to find ways to get it through. And we'll see, I think even in some of the proposed changes to our regulations are to make some certain soil testing a little bit more streamlined, because they are needed for what's usually replacement systems that are improvements for failed systems and do not apply to new construction. But okay, so the people have questions about this? Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome. You know, the other thing you mentioned, Michael, is that, you know, the MACC handbook is probably online, and we probably have a sign in, and it would probably be a great idea if we're going to use that folder as a way to, you know, as a reference, that we kind of, you know, maybe set up one document that has things like that,
Sure.
like links to that. And the other thing I would mention is that the MACC conferences are great if you go to the annual conferences, because they always sell all of these kind of specialized handbooks. Like I have one on enforcement. I mean, I've gotten multiple handbooks when I'm there, and they're super, super helpful, because we have so many of these things that come before us that it can be a one-off thing. It's never happened before. And you're trying to figure out what is the regulation, both at the state level, and then sometimes we have to know at the state level, because sometimes our bylaws are silent on very specific things. So that's my usual plug for going to the MACC.
Could also put stuff here so you don't have to go, because for example, Courtney put in the conference materials from the 2022.
Oh, wow, that's great.
22. It's a little hard to search the titles, and I don't know how well this program allows you to search by some keyword here, but we might find some interesting stuff here that it's actually, I have to go. There's a wetland plant handout for all we know here. We've never really gone into this thing here, and here is a whole list here that we already got here from that. So there's all sorts of resources that we already have here. That's hard to keep track of all of it. But no, we'll try to put in a page. I can't tell, they used to sell hard copies of the handbook, and then they moved it onto online.
It's all digital now.
And it's all digital. So we'll put in a file in the folder. And under this documents here, where we have regulations and DEP guidance here, we'll put a file here. There's so much stuff here too. There's beaver threats.
Oh,
a million things to go read about here, and I have a whole folder of my own where we tried to do a whole flow diagram on how to handle beaver stuff, and we had more of them that I'll have to go dig up. There's a lot of stuff here. There's the whole wetlands bylaw, but we'll put in a file here that's called the MACC handbook login. And we'll put in a login and a password. So people can go to it. I would recommend for new people who haven't seen the book, it's a wonderful document that has the basics. It would, just to look at the table of contents, I would suggest for the new folks to go do it. I used to use it all the time. We used to be photocopying it from it all, but now since it's all online, we'll get something there, and maybe if we get a login here, just to prod people, we can see whether we just do the login online and just at a point during a meeting, just to sort of go give a little tour of it. Just to prod people. Okay, so we'll stick that file in here. And we'll give it a name that somehow is whatever it's called. We'll do this thing, somehow we'll stick it in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
just probably change the title to say RDAs or something like you had in the agenda item here.
Yeah, we have to go back to whatever, so we go to meetings. Okay. We will go. Let's see. Well, come on. Oh, every time I double click and it keeps going too far. Negative determination regulations. Is that a good title? Do we like that title? So I'm about to just move it in there. And
Maybe
hopefully
say for RDAs, just in case somebody's thinking, oh, what's your RDAs? I don't know. It's up to you.
Fine. What other things do we have here while you guys watch me do this? I think we've gone through the agenda. Joyce, do you have anything here?
I do not.
Okay. I will call it this. And I will make, oops, sorry. Okay, so then in that case, people don't have to see me futzing here, but I'll try to remember to do this as soon as we adjourn. Okay, so Joyce, you're going to do a doodle for that site visit. And that we're going to do for, can't remember the name of the place, but I know there's a site visit. And the other thing is for people who want to know, at Hidden Meadow at 10 a.m. on Saturday, the land management working group is going to look at Hidden Meadow from these there, as in those files there that I just showed you under documents, there is something called land inventories. There is a document there that's, these documents are incredible pieces that the town has bought consultants, that we hired consultants to prepare. They're going to go through some of the recommendations in the field there. So people might want to attend. If you're interested in seeing, it's a nice, if you haven't been to Hidden Meadow, it's a nice place to go to. So, but that's 10 a.m. on Saturday, and I think they're meeting at Bear Hill Road is one of the entrances. I guess is really the entrance to Hidden Meadow. We used to want to have an entrance on the other side on Western Ave, but we never got around to setting that up because it's a complicated clearing issue. So I recommend that. I might be was going to go, but unfortunately I have some family stuff I have to deal with. So, okay. Any other issues or announcements from anybody? Okay, I move to adjourn at 10:10.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, aye. Steve?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Okay. Another day. I'm excited by the fact that we got through the tree thing. Finally, so we're almost there. And we'll have an interesting time dealing with 3 Prospect Street next time. Okie dokie. Thank you, Jacob. And good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.
Like,